konnichiwa. How's Salam. Bonjour. Bonjour. Marhaban. Привет. 안녕.
Pretty cute, right? Anyways, cuteness aside, language is pretty cool, you know? By knowing a language, a seemingly endless number of experiences become available to us. We can watch movies, read books, talk to other people, and generally are able to take part in the active communication in its many variations, like saying hello. So, if language is as powerful as it seems, what if we knew 2 or 3, or maybe even more? Exactly. People who know a certain number of languages are privy to an equivalent number of whole other worlds. Thus, I have a bone to pick. The individuals born with the silver spoon of language shoved straight down their throats. Yeah, I'm talking about you, random child of an immigrant that I don't know. Check it out. First, have immigrant parents. Then, immigrant parents move to new country. In the new country, immigrant parents give birth to a baby, or a worm. That baby grows up listening to parent language and new country language. And then, bam, multilingual superhero. But wait, I'm the son of an immigrant. Double wait, can't speak another language? What's this nonsense? My dad was born in South Korea. He moved to the United States at the age of 8, so he definitely knew the language at that point. So, where did it go wrong? Why can't I speak Korean? Well, my dad moved here by himself, and being as young as he was, with no other Koreans to talk to, he ultimately forgot how to speak his native tongue. Extremely unfortunate for him, for sure, but also a tragedy for me. I missed out on being native level in Korean and... Wait, what else? Well, why don't we take a look at what exactly makes me different from my immigrant child counterparts that did learn their parents' language. Introducing Brother Jeffrey. This is Jeffrey Yu, a brother from the fraternity I'm in. Phi Kappa Sigma. And here's his introduction. Hi.
That's okay.
So, yeah, that's it. I forgot to ask Jeffrey to introduce himself, so I'll step in on his behalf. Jeffrey Yu, 4th year, Chinese, born in America, parents from Shanghai region of China. There it is. Anyhow, I asked Jeffrey how his relationship with his Chinese heritage would differ if he was either less proficient or more proficient in speaking Chinese. His response?
That's a hard question. I know that they say, there's like a saying that like the best way to learn the culture is like, okay, well, is it the saying? I don't know. It's hard to say because I definitely feel like if I did know the language even more, I would have a stronger connection. Maybe because like I would be more comfortable with talking with more native speakers and therefore be more involved with like more native people, right? But since English is my most comfortable language, then like I'd seek out more English speakers, hence like be more incorporated with the American culture.
Okay.
So I could see that, you know, learning, being more comfortable with my native or my like cultural tongue I think I would have even stronger ties with the Chinese culture.
What's up? Jeff wasn't sure if he'd feel more disconnected from his culture if he knew less of the language, but he was rather certain that knowing the language better would help him feel more connected to said culture. This is to be expected. While culture is closely linked to language, it isn't dependent on it. His experiences with Chinese tradition, ideology, food, and other cultural elements aren't just going to poof into thin air if he didn't know the language. Take myself, for instance. I don't know any Korean, but I feel very attached to my Korean heritage. However, if Jeff knew more of the language, well, you heard what he said. More proficiency equals more comfortability and opportunity to be exposed to Chinese culture. Thus, the illustration is made. Language is like a bridge that opens up a path to so many more avenues and facets of a culture. What about identity? Compare language to a sword, and the ones that wield it are the swordsmen. A monolingual person would wield a single sword, whereas a multilingual speaker would wield 2, 3, or even more swords. You wouldn't expect the fighting styles of these different swordsmen to be the same when the number of weapons they wield are different. And just as these swordsmen express their fighting styles with their swords, so too do people express their identities with their languages. Introducing dual-wielding Jeff. In one hand he wields English, and in the other he wields Chinese, and this has most definitely influenced how he expresses his identity.
So when my parents talk to me, especially with my dad, we talk a lot of like tech stuff. So he would kind of maybe start off with some Chinese, and then if he wants to reference like a specific like tech, phrase or a concept, he'd often switch to English, so that I could understand it. Because like I don't know, like I know what machine learning is, but some like different concepts would just sound weird to me. I wouldn't understand it. But if you said in English, it'd just be easier for me to follow the conversation. With my mom, there's not too much of that flipping because she's not as familiar with the English. So she's definitely way more comfortable with Chinese. So I don't see it that often. I sometimes do flip because English is my native language, so I can like say something in mostly Chinese, and then there's a word I get hung up on. I'm like, okay, I don't know how to say it in Chinese, so then I'll flip to English and just say it that way, and then continue on, or finish with English. It just depends on really depends on the vocab that I know, and like I don't want to have to hang on to a word, like figure out a word, because then it'd just be harder to communicate that way.
By being able to speak to his family in both Chinese and English, Jeff is able to express himself to the best of his abilities. He finds balance between the language he is most comfortable with, English, and the language his parents are most comfortable with, Chinese. Without this duality, there's no way they would be able to understand each other nearly as well, especially in the case of Jeff's mom, considering she doesn't speak much of English at all. Some words and phrases just are so much easier to express in one language over another. Take this scene, for example.
ここより世界に痛みを神羅転生
Oui, mort, si blessé. Je pète ma bière, malubulul.
No hate to French people, but come on, that was straight goofy. I mean, the Japanese clip had intensity and impact, but the French one just made me laugh out loud. Anyways, referring back to Jeff, this balance that he is able to achieve in his multilingual communication with his parents is further expressed in how he identifies with the English and Chinese cultures respectively.
That's a hard question to answer. Sometimes I feel like subconsciously I have more connection with the Chinese culture, especially just like with the way that I perceive the world and the way that I think, because my parents have brought that Chinese culture and taught me explicitly or by their behavior and me watching them, how they would interact, and they have that strong Chinese culture. So maybe subconsciously I'm more like leaning towards the Chinese culture, but I know that I have ideals that are different from them, and that ideal stems from like my experiences in America. So I can't really say per se like if I lean more towards a certain culture. I think I just kind of like have aspects of both, and maybe it's like quite even.
Okay. There you have it. Despite growing up in America his whole life, Jeff still identifies with being Chinese. The swords he wields are balanced and play different roles in his identity. This isn't the case for all children of immigrants. Some don't identify with their parents' culture because they feel more a part of the culture of the country they grew up in. Nevertheless, a whole host of influences go into determining a person's identity, and language clearly plays an integral role in doing just that. So, I'm Korean, but I don't speak Korean. Jeff is Chinese, and he does speak Chinese. We both still incorporate our parents' culture into our daily lives and identity, but the gap between us is clear. I still feel strongly towards my Korean heritage, but with language, it could be so much more. So, I naturally came to the only logical conclusion. I decided to learn Japanese. No, I'm serious. Don't get me wrong. I want to learn Korean next, but I've also grown up admiring many aspects of Japanese culture. Anyways, this is to say that language is not something you should feel obligated towards because of heritage or any other factor. Multilingualism can benefit all people but should be enjoyed and wanted. If you can achieve this, you'll open the door to a whole new world of culture and experience.